Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Social Media Office Hours. And I just love doing this. It's my favorite part of teaching is kind of getting together with students and just chatting and seeing what questions are on their mind. And I thought, well, why not kind of open it up to the world and have some fun connecting with people, seeing people that I wouldn't normally see in real life, and bring in some interesting people who I admire. And today's guest is a friend of mine and someone I really admire. His name is Chad Pollitt, and he runs a business called Relevance. If you're not familiar with Relevance, you should really check it out, because Chad and I think intellectually these days are two brothers from a different mother. Chad was one of the first people really in the business to begin talking about and blogging about and writing about this idea that our content simply isn't enough anymore. And his site, Relevance, they have really a host of different properties there, are really devoted to this idea of distribution, promotion, and advertising. And how do we get that content to rise above the noise, the noise, to become the signal. So Chad, welcome to Social Media Office Hours. And I'd also like to remind everyone that we are recording this, and I will be posting this on my blog. So if you have a question, join the open seat. We'd love to hear from you and hear what's on your mind around content, social media, distribution, promotion these days. So Chad, before we started recording, we were just beginning to talk a little bit today about quite a provocative article that appeared on BuzzSumo today. And I really like the guys over at BuzzSumo. They do a lot of interesting twists and turns with analytics. And the post today had some profoundly interesting charts that showed three of the most respected content producers in the business, Buffer, Moz, and Copyblogger, have had a cataclysmic fall in the amount of sharing that's going on with their content. So you had some ideas to think, well, maybe there's something other than just social sharing going on here. So why don't you kick off our discussion and let us know what you think is going on?
Yeah, so by the way, Mark, thank you for that introduction. I've been thinking about this a lot since Buffer came out a few weeks ago, and they said basically that their social media traffic has tanked across the board.
Cut by half in a year.
Right. And then BuzzSumo was able to figure out that they're not the only ones, Moz as well as Copyblogger. So here's what, basically BuzzSumo is saying that because of content shock, it's having an impact upstream to the big boys that have been around and have established domains and established audiences. I think it's more complicated than that, really. I see two things other than content shock playing out here. One, if you noticed in the early days of social media, especially on Twitter, bots ruled the sharing world. If you look at really successful content, the bots typically got a hold of it and could add huge amounts of shares.
Now tell me, let's stop right there. Let me ask you a question. Tell me a little bit more about what you mean by bots. Is this something more than just a person automatically sharing an RSS feed, or is there something more sinister behind that?
Yeah, so it's both. So it is around RSS, plugging in an RSS feed to, let's say, a Twitter farm. There's spammers out there that have created dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of spam accounts where they just plug in RSS feeds and then they share. I believe, well, and you can also do that on the other social networks as well through different third-party tools. And I've noticed that that has declined, at least with my content and the things that I've done. Now, I haven't done a study or anything like that, but I've noticed the amount of bot sharing has decreased. Now, Twitter recently has been really messing around with their API and the ability for third-party apps to do different things. I don't know if that plays a role, but I think that has an impact on what BuzzSumo has written about. But I don't think that's the only thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking from your experience. I mean, looking at my analytics, and I don't pretend to have the authority that the Copy Blogger or Moz or Buffer has. I mean, these are three sites that I really revere and admire. But the bot sharing really, any change in the bot sharing really hasn't had a significant impact on my volume, on my traffic. But I acknowledge, and wouldn't you think that this might have something to do with changes in SEO, that those crazy things some of those bots might have been trying to shoot for with their sharing maybe is irrelevant now?
Could be.
Yeah. So you were beginning to have some other thoughts there.
Yeah. So some people are aware of this, some aren't, but every single link on the internet has assigned to it metadata. It's called, they call it UTM parameters. Okay. And what this metadata does is it communicates to the analytics program the source of the link. So when you look at your, say, Google Analytics, or maybe you have another program that you use, and it says that you got a referral, a visitor from a referring source, and you look, and maybe that's my website to your website. Well, when you move to the mobile environment and you're in an app like Facebook's app in the mobile environment, that UTM parameter is stripped out. So if somebody clicks on that link, it actually reports as direct traffic. So you don't know where that link is coming from. Now, some estimates, I believe, say that Facebook is up to 25% of traffic, right? Well, the large majority of Facebook's traffic is in-app.
Sure.
So the end result of that is a lot of invisible Facebook traffic.
Yeah.
And that plays itself out in other apps and other environments and dark social as well.
So this is quite interesting, Chad. So really what you're saying is that the analysis done by BuzzSumo was looking at social shares, but according to your theory, even though that might be going down because things might be accounted for differently, that it shouldn't have an impact on their traffic.
Right, and to know that, I'd have to look at their direct traffic channel. If their social media referring traffic is on the decline at approximately the same rate as their direct traffic is on the incline, then that would make up the difference. Now, that stripping of the UTM parameters has to have a large impact because so many people are moving to the Facebook mobile app now. So I can't imagine it not having an impact.
Yeah, and I just want to mention when you use words like UTM parameters, I get hives. I'm allergic. I'm allergic to like coding. If you just say the word HTML, I'm going to start scratching right here in front of you on the web. So just stop that right now.
Okay, we'll call it metadata.
Yeah. But this is a great conversation. Now, the only thing that kind of punches a hole in that is that Buffer reported, I believe it was last week or the week before, that their traffic is down by 50% in 12 months. And then BuzzSumo said, well, look, their sharing is down by 50% too. So it's a complex cocktail, isn't it? There's a lot of different things going on. I don't think you can point to any one reason, but certainly this idea of content shock, which is, the overwhelming information density that we all face on the web, must play some role. So I'd like to take advantage of some of this time together. One of the things that really got my attention about you early on, Chad, was your very scientific approach to analysis around what distribution channels work, what advertising strategies work to get our content shown and shared. So tell me about, are there some things recently that are really interesting to you? Any new insights, any new data that you're working on that you want to share with the audience today?
Yeah, so it's not generally known in our industry, but Google has their native advertising network in private beta right now, and I anticipate that being released next year. So generally speaking, the content marketing that most of us do is very, very top of the funnel. It's very helpful. Okay. What we know about our top of the funnel content is that, sure, we want to get someone to read it, but there's still more work that we need to do as a business to nurture that person down to the middle, down to the bottom of the funnel. Because of this, the traditional paid channels of content promotion, like banner advertising or pay-per-click, those channels aren't built for our top funnel content. Traditionally, those channels served mid to bottom funnel content very well, right?
So what do you mean by that, mid to bottom level?
So
something less than helpful.
So a mid-funnel content asset for a B2B company, say a SaaS company, might be a case study.
Yeah, something evergreen.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And for a retail establishment, a bottom funnel promotion might be an actual product where, say you type something into Google and you see a product that you can buy right there. That would be bottom funnel, right? But with the top funnel content, it doesn't quite work that way because we still have to invest the time, energy, and effort to continue to nurture that content consumer down our funnel. And it costs the same to promote top of the funnel content as it does to promote bottom funnel content. So why would a business bother promoting top funnel content on that channel? Well, they're not. And that represents a gap for us marketers because we're producing mostly top funnel content, right? And this is where native advertising comes in and sponsored content. And sponsored content is on the up and up. Companies are trying to figure out, and media outlets are trying to figure out how to create the proper mix and provide value. And as a result of that, the media are building or buying content marketing agencies like crazy. They are all doing it to give people access to their audiences and the ability to persuade them. So let's go back to Google. Their native network that's in private beta is going to compete directly with your Outbrains, Tabulas, AdBlades, so on and so forth, but they're going to do something none of those companies do. They are going to create a turnkey system for people like you and I, Mark. We can go in and we can actually write an article and submit it to the media outlets and blogs of our choice, and it'll go through their bidding system. And if they accept, then of course that transaction will happen, and you'll have access to a bigger audience or a target.
That makes so much sense. It's a little scary, but it makes so much sense.
So that's the big thing I see coming around next year, because there's a big gap for us content marketers at the top of the funnel for distribution.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that it's almost like the cavalry coming over the hill to rescue marketers is, the business is in crisis right now in terms of ad blocking. I mean, it was bad enough nobody's, banner advertising is essentially so ineffective anyway. but now you've got ad blocking, and the latest statistic I showed was, about a third of the people on the web are using some sort of ad blocker. And I think marketers and advertisers are just desperate right now to find some way to get their content and their ideas out in front of people. So that's really going to come at a good time, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And there's a company currently, a recent startup called News Launcher, that's created this turnkey ability to tap into media outlets at scale. They have a very thick service layer, I believe, with that as well. I haven't engaged with them to do a campaign, but they exist. But as soon as Google launches theirs, they're in for a fight.
Yeah. Well, so we had a comment here asking you to perhaps flesh out this concept a little bit. What do you know, or how do you forecast that this bidding system would actually work?
So basically, what I know is from leaks from Google. There's been a couple articles written from leaks of people inside of Google. There's not been a lot leaked out. So I'm actually guesstimating that there will be a bidding system, because everything Google does is based on a bidding system. Supply, demand, how much you're willing to spend, and other quality factors. I don't know what that algorithm is going to look like exactly, but I'd imagine it'll be a part of that system.
Well, it really makes quite a lot of sense. And as you're speaking, my wheels are also turning around how influence marketing could be disintermediated in that way. Today, it's a very, very sloppy process. It's a very unscientific process. How do we match brands with influencers? And wouldn't it be interesting if that gets rolled into that whole mix too? Not so you've got the possible bid for content placement, but also could there be some sort of factor around the who's doing it, where it's doing it, what's the authority of the people involved? Could be very, very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. The future looks very cool for us top funnel content marketers.
So tell me about some of the ways. How are you distributing your content today? You recently won an award from the Content Marketing Institute, so congratulations on that. And it was around the radical growth of your publications. So you are walking the talk, my friend. So tell people some of your inside secrets. How do you distribute and promote your content that seems to be effective today?
So, Mark, I can tell you that I don't want the audience to go away thinking there's one or two things they can do that will explode their subscribers. Okay, this was really a combination.
But we want massive traffic.
It was a combination of several things over time, and the most important thing that we did was we focused on a niche. So if you think about it, there's probably over 10,000 marketing blogs out there, and most of them are trying to be all things to everybody marketing. We chose not to go that route. We looked at our prospects and at our clients, and we said, well, what is at the core root of their problems that we want to help them solve? And it was content promotion. Earned, owned, and paid content promotion was at the heart of most of their visibility challenges. So we said, you know what? Nobody owns content promotion. We stuck our flag in the sand. We said, we're going to be all about content promotion as a digital publication. And that was the number one thing that we did, was we focused on a niche.
Wow.
Something else that's cool that I figured out within a month of launching was when you focus on content promotion as your niche and you cover the different tools and the different networks of content promotion or for content promotion, they tend to want to promote your content for you. I can't tell you how much free earned paid media we've got over since we launched. We've gotten tons of it, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. In fact, Buffer, I included them in a roundup article I did, and Buffer alone drove over 4,000 unique visitors to that article. So yeah, that's a nifty little secret. If you write about content promotion companies and networks, they tend to want to promote and amplify your content for you.
So I talk a lot about this in the Content Code book. I talk about the very vital importance of discovering what is the information density of your marketplace. How do you discover your niche, or as they say in Europe, your niche? I go both ways. Your niche or your niche. So what research did you do beforehand? I've got a few little formulas in the book, but
right.
How did you determine this is a wide open space? Let's go for it.
So I'm probably I'm one of the rare few that I just knew, because I've been in this space long enough. I'm tapped in. I know the players. I read prolifically. So I've got my finger on the pulse. So I knew. But if I didn't know, then I would go to Google and start doing some searches and see how many results Google says are there. And that would be how I would determine that.
That's awesome. It's something that certainly I've written quite a bit about. So if you're just joining us, welcome. And I'd like to invite you to come on and click on the button and join a seat and ask questions. This is your opportunity to kind of ask the experts. Well, expert, singular, not plural. And I also want to remind you that this is being recorded, and it will probably show up in a future blog post. But we'd love to have you on. We've got a lot of familiar names here. So one of the questions that's coming through is they're asking, Chad, what is your definition of content promotion? How broad or narrow is this in your mind?
So that's an excellent question. Now, I've actually created a Venn diagram that spells this out, but I can verbally explain it as well. So basically, content promotion is a big umbrella, okay? And underneath that umbrella, there's 3 channels. There's owned media. Now, your owned media is your content broadcasting channels. So if you email your list or get on your brand or your personal Twitter account and you tweet out an article, that's broadcasting, okay? Then you have an earned channel as well. Now, your earned media is going to be things like media relations, so pitching a journalist to cover maybe a case study you did or some type of study that you did covering your content. They write about it and link to it. Influencer marketing falls under that category as well. Another thing that I've done throughout my career is I have bylines on lots of other websites. So I actually write more for other websites than I do for Relevance. And that was one of the critical factors in helping Relevance succeed in the early days. So those are examples of earned media that as a content marketer, I would definitely explore. They also tend to be the most powerful channels for delivering leads and business at the end of the day. Then the last bucket is paid media. So this is where commonly referred to as content distribution. Okay, Forrester refers to that channel as content distribution. And when it comes to top funnel content, generally, I'm describing native advertising, advertorial sponsored content, a sponsored newsletter. So natively getting into someone's newsletter. Those are all paid channels that you can use to distribute top funnel content.
Awesome. You know, there's been a topic on my mind that I've been writing about And I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. As Facebook and LinkedIn particularly have evolved, they're becoming more content-rich channels rather than just what I had for breakfast, or here's a picture of Grumpy Cat. The economics of these platforms are driven by how much time do you spend on our site, how much personal information can we collect from you while you're on our site, and how many ads can we show you while you're there. So we've been hearing about this new emphasis on dwell time, specifically from Facebook, but you can see this happening with LinkedIn too. These platforms, they don't want your links anymore. They want your content. And, I've been doing some experiments, both on my own and with some of my customers, to see what's the difference if you put a link on Facebook versus, pasting the whole piece of content. And it's profound. You get a lot more traffic, a lot more visibility, a lot more shares, a lot more comments. But the problem is you're not driving people back to your site. You're not driving people back to your calls to action. And as we've known, you can't really do that too much on the web. You need to be helping people, not selling people. So where's this going to end up? How are you going to adapt and adopt? What are some of the implications of this trend in your mind?
So I've been thinking a lot about this too, Mark. So let's talk about the landscape. I see a war coming.
That sounds like we're in a line for a movie or something. There's a storm cloud coming.
So Facebook is launching their instant articles, right? That's what they call it.
Yeah.
And Twitter and Google came out and announced a partnership where they're going to do something very similar. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but it's supposed to go up against what Facebook is doing. And then I was fortunate enough to visit LinkedIn in the Empire State Building a few weeks back, and I was talking to one of the employees, and I was told that they're going to have their own response to Google and Twitter's announcement, as well as Facebook's instant articles. So they're all going to be doing it. It'll be a slightly different flavor. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out and where people like us tend to end up gravitating.
Doesn't this really cut at the heart of the whole content marketing philosophy, where your website, the home room for your content, is the magnet, right?
Yes.
Do good work, you create good content, and it's like that's the inbound traffic, the inbound customer who is attracted to your content. And now these platforms that were so useful for distributing this content and for getting people to come back to our site, I mean, that game is changing, and it's changing fast. And doesn't this really just cut at the heart of what content marketing is about?
Yes, I think it does. And I think it's going to backfire for them. Not at first.
Really?
Not at first. So here's the thing. If you knew it or not, BuzzFeed is in bed with Facebook. So they're cutting all kinds of beta deals before anything's released. They get special treatment from Facebook. Mm-hmm. So basically, Facebook is trying to own the internet. They want Facebook to be the portal for everything you do. And they're going to attract the media and probably eventually brands to publish their content there.
Right.
And they're going to give us the ability to sell advertising for our own content. Now, if we don't sell it, then Facebook's going to sell it.
Now, define us.
So,
are you talking about the New York Times, or are you talking about me and you?
So if they let me and you on instant articles, which they haven't announced yet, but if they do, we'll in theory have the same ability that the New York Times does to sell advertising. Mm-hmm. Okay. So here's the thing. At the end of the day, it's our content. They need our content. They need the media's content. And by them being a third party, publishing our content and the media's content, what they're really going to do is they're going to drive down the CPM value of what's out there currently that the media is charging. So they're going to cut directly into the profits of the media, and eventually cut into our lead generation as B2B marketers, if you're a B2B marketer. I see it backfiring down the road. It's going to actually hurt publishers in the long run.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think we'll just have to see how this plays out. So, for example, New York Times and other newspapers, these are companies that depend on the monetization of their content. Their business model is different than you or me. So I depend on my content really to build relationships. People will write me. They're saying, hey, I've read your blog for 3 years. I've read all your books. I love what you do. I believe in you. I want to hire you. All right. That's my business model. It's not advertising. The advertising revenue I could get for my content would be infinitesimal. Well, it would be small based on this revenue I would get from speaking or consulting or doing workshops, creating strategies, something like that. So to me, oh my gosh, I'm going to get a little bit of advertising revenue, but people aren't ever visiting my website. That's great for the New York Times. I'm not sure it's going to be that great for me. So, one of the things I've been thinking about, one of the implications of this, is that branding is more important than ever. That really, this isn't going to be about driving people to a site. This is maybe one of the reverberations of content shock. I don't know. I've got to think it through. But right now, the mantra, the theory of content marketing is creating, interrupting someone's search or interrupting their day with some piece of great content that brings them to a site, and then you hope beyond hope that they'll opt in or they'll connect with you or they'll become a subscriber. And those days now, I'm not saying it's coming to an end, but there is definitely change in the air, which means, I think one of the implications is this isn't going to be about driving traffic. It's going to be about building your brand in such a way that people will say, wow, this person is so interesting. Every time I see one of his articles, wherever it is, he or she makes me think, is creating value. It's really helping me. Then I'm going to go try to find out more about this person. It's not going to be the direct link like we used to have that we've enjoyed for the last 5 or 6 years. It's going to be indirect. It's going to be a little more subtle. It's going to suggest some new strategies. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's sort of the same concept with.
I'm so happy you agree with me, by the way, because I was really going out on a limb there.
with LinkedIn Pulse. I mean, like when I said earlier, I actually write for other websites more than for Relevance, and I do it because I want to tap into other audiences. And sure, some of those I have direct links and people click over, and I incrementally grow my audience that way. But I'm sure there's a large chunk of those people that in a dark way, right, they end up doing a search or finding me somewhere else, or they come through those channels. So we truly live in a world of multi-touch attribution, where we think that search brought somebody over to our website when actually there's 5 or 6 different things that brought them to our website.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're happy to be joined by the BuzzSumo man himself, Steve Rayson. And Steve, this is cool because we've never met or talked before.
Yeah, hi, Mark. Really nice to see you. Nice to see you, Chad, as well.
Hey, Steve.
Absolutely awesome. And Steve has been writing these little bits of wisdom over in the comment section. I'm saying, dude, come on over and join us and join the fun. So, Steve, what's on your mind?
Yeah, no, it's really Good conversation. And as you know, I'm really interested from the article I did today around the content shock, because a lot of people have responded already saying it's a very complicated picture. And at one level, I think it's complicated. At another level, I think it might be just very simple. The volume of content being produced is just huge. And we've got no more time in our days to read it, to share it. And so it doesn't really surprise me in a way that average shares are dropping. It doesn't mean content's not effective, but average shares do seem to be dropping because you're just competing with so much more content. And Copyblogger are publishing so much more this year than they did last year. So they're competing with their own content as well. So it's not a surprise, really, to me, that average sort of engagement's falling. But interestingly, already in response to my article, people are saying, oh, no, it's a much more complicated picture. It's not really about content shock. And I'm not sure I agree with that, just from a straightforward sort of logical perspective, really.
Well, you know, on the original content shock article, which, believe it or not, was 2 years ago now, almost 2 years ago, one of my readers left a comment that was really stunning to me and disheartening to me in a way. This was a guy who was one of my early blog readers, one of my most faithful readers and commenters. And I hadn't seen him for a long time. And he left a comment. He said, Mark, I don't share your blog or comment on your blog anymore because there's just too much stuff. It has nothing to do with you. You are creating the same great content you always have. I have the same emotional connection I have to you that I've always had. There is just too many distractions in my busy life, and these things have to go. Some things have to go. And I thought, oh my gosh, if that isn't the business case of what we're all up against, I don't know what is. Well, here's a guy. He was a faithful reader. I was a beloved blogger to him. You know, we had this kind of history together, and that wasn't even enough to keep him as a reader. So really quite a profound statement.
Yeah, and I think that the data speaks for itself. We may not like the data, but when we looked at the million blog posts with Moz, 75% of posts got zero links. I mean, zero links. So, that's, I think people generally share less these days. And I think people are certainly linking a lot less. And that probably has implications as well for how people find content. And I think the sort of dichotomy, really, which is at the one level, social seems to be more important in content discovery. I mean, I don't know if the figures are correct or not, but Sheeraholic and people are saying Facebook drives 25% of traffic and sometimes even more. So one level, social is becoming more important for social discovery, but actually getting people to share your content and getting to the streams seems to be getting harder and harder, logically, just because there's so much traffic. And so we looked at those million posts. On the ones we took at random, 8 shares was the median, 50%. Averages are quite misleading because some posts got 200,000 shares and skewed your average enormously.
Sure.
But if you looked at the median rather than the mean, 50% of posts got 8 shares or less. So that's quite low. And it's also consistent. I know TrackMaven did a big piece of research. They looked at 8,000 brands recently, and they found that they published 78% more content, quite precise increase, but 60% less engagement.
Were you able to tease anything out of this data, Steve, that indicates, you mentioned social continues to be important as a distribution and as a discovery channel. Were you able to tease anything else out of here? Was there any surprise that showed, oh, that's interesting. Look, this is something that is working.
We did try to look at, obviously, the posts that got very heavily shared, and often they peaked on around a particular trend very quickly. We found that shares tended to explode very fast, so shares took place very quickly. So like the blue dress, black dress, whatever it was, shares around that exploded very quickly and then died quite quickly. Links tended to build, obviously, more over time. So we found some things. We looked at what was getting both shares and links. We did find a difference, and the key is we found that shares don't lead to links. I think a lot of people assume that you would get content heavily shared and those shares would lead to links. We found that just wasn't true at all, that shares don't lead to links. People normally share a link for different reasons. There is an area of overlap, but generally entertaining content, news, fast content gets shared quite quickly. More long-form, comprehensive, evergreen content tends to be more content that gets linked. So some obvious points in a way. But we found there was no correlation at all between shares and links. So yeah, if you want to get content shared, it doesn't necessarily mean you get links either. So it depends what you're trying to do with your content, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just for us, Steve, we average one new linking domain a day, and that's been consistent. And regardless of social shares, high, low, indifferent, medium, whatever, that's just our average, and it's been consistent for the last 12 months.
Yeah,
That's really interesting. I love your point, Steve. And I've never really connected those dots before, but I see this happening as well, that the new content gets the shares, the older content gets the links, maybe, you know, some of the evergreen content, that that it may take weeks or months for some of those links to develop. Quite an interesting observation.
Yeah, we definitely found that there are differences between what gets shared and what gets linked. And certainly the more evergreen content, comprehensive content, tended to do better on the link front. But as I say, I think even we were surprised when we just pulled the data just how low some of the numbers were. But I think when you just consider the sheer increases in volumes of content, I mean, I think if you look at Copyblogger or Mog, I think Moz, they're 3, 4, 5 times higher content publications than they did last year. So naturally,
Are you saying you're saying like 300% increase?
300% increase, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I can dig you out the stats. I went through the stats. It was only after Kevin from Buffer, and all credit to the Buffer guys for being incredibly transparent. Kevin published that post, so I thought I'd go and have a look. So I looked at the Buffer ones, and then I thought I'd just see what it's like for others. And actually, I found a very similar pattern on most sites, actually, which is generally the average shares per post coming down. But I also found another pattern, which was generally people all publishing more content. So, and that maybe you can argue that's working because Copybloggers' shares overall have actually increased. So shares of their domain have increased overall, but as a consequence of doing a lot more content. And so the average per article's come down. So maybe you can argue the ROI, the content's actually declined, but maybe it's working for them because they're actually getting more shares than they were getting last year. It's just taking them a lot more content to get those shares.
Yeah, and that's money. There's an investment there. The other subtle thing, and it might be something that we look at, or maybe something BuzzSumo could look at over time, is the correlation between number of comments and shares. Because one of the things I found in researching the content code book is that commenters also tend to share. They've created an emotional connection. They've invested in the content by creating their own content and spending their own time on that site. And I know, quite famously, Copyblogger cut their comments. So it would be interesting to see if there's a correlation over time between site, content volume. I'm not sure if that's something you can easily measure, and sharing volume.
Certainly. I'll make a note of it because I'm always keen to look at any correlations. We're doing a study at the moment, which will come out in about 3 weeks' time with SimilarWeb, where we're looking at correlations between links, shares, and views. Now, the view data is from SimilarWeb, so there are some estimations within that. They don't have the Google Analytics stats, but it will be interesting to see correlations between shares, views, shares and views, and links and views, and to whether content that's getting more shares, it gets more views. But I'll certainly look at the commenting side because I suspect you're right in that people just get more engaged with it, have more sort of input into it. Really, will then share. But I'll certainly make a note to look at that.
Yeah. As you get into the psychology and sociology of sharing, it's really quite mesmerizing because when people share content, it's a big deal. It's a big decision. And so I'm looking at look, we can trick people into clicking on our content, but we can't trick them into sharing. You've got it. There's no shortcut. You've got to do the work. You've got to create something great. You've got to create that emotional bond. Maybe it's through a comment. Maybe it's through a relationship. Who knows? But so very, very interesting dynamic.
I think some sites do that quite well. For example, I know Barcelona Football Club use quizzes, and they use quizzes so you can really prove you're part of the tribe.
Yep.
Same your knowledge. Yeah, you're saying, I'm a really committed Barcelona supporter because I can answer all these questions. And BuzzFeed use it in a crude way, which is, if you notice the most shared quizzes on BuzzFeed, they all start the hardest. And what they found is if you start a quiz the hardest and then people score top marks, something like 95% of them share it because they want to sort of show that they've got a good score on the hardest quiz. So they're all adopting different techniques to try and encourage people to share or to understand why people share.
In 2014, 9 out of the top most shared, this might have come from you actually, Actually, I think maybe this is a BuzzSumo fact. So I'm teaching you something here today, Steve. 9 out of the top 10 articles were quizzes.
Yeah.
Again, why? Emotional connection, right?
Yeah.
Emotional connection.
Yeah.
Well, we're running out of time here today, and this has been a fantastic conversation. I'd like to thank you, Chad, so much for spending your time here today, and congratulations for all the good work you're doing. Steve, again, thank you for
thank you
your
for inviting me.
contributions at BuzzSumo. I love the data-driven view that you bring to our field, and the outstanding capabilities really the insights that you're sharing that are helping all of us. So thank you. Thanks
thank you.
to all of you for joining today. I will be publishing this on my blog, so you can enjoy this and share it with your friends. Thank you so much.